Here in the United States, it's election day as I record this, and I don't know about you, but this day couldn't come soon enough. There is so much negativity, so many polarizing conversations, and so much tension. And since there are two candidates to choose from, at the end of the day, there will be one camp who is happy, and there will be one camp who is not so happy. I do not care who you voted for. I do hope that you did vote if you're here in the United States, but I really care about the health and well-being of our nation first and foremost. And so I think in so many ways, now more than ever, there are so many things in the world we live in that feel out of control to us. And interestingly, years ago, I created a course called Taking Back Control. And now, almost 5 years later, I still get emails about how powerful this course is for people. And so, if the world feels a little bit or maybe a lot out of control for you, whether you're a midlife mom or not, this episode, where I'm going to be talking about taking back control, it's worth listening to and it's worth sharing. So, with that, let's jump in.
Well, hey there, my name is Jennifer Roskamp, and I am a certified life coach and homeschool mom of 9 who is passionate about helping women just like you embrace the here and now while also being focused on creating the life you actually want. As a midlife mom in her 40s, about to be a mom in my 50s, I've realized that it's so easy to lose yourself in caring for your family, your home, and all the things. Until one day you realize you're not even sure who you are anymore or what you even want in life. So on this podcast, we're going to work on managing yourself well so that you can manage all of the other things and people well too. So let's dive into what it means to manage your home, your time, your family, and yourself well. This is the Intentional Midlife Mom podcast.
So, I don't know if you've noticed, and maybe you wouldn't even agree with me, but I see a lack of positivity in the world these days. And in reality, that lack of positivity and the overwhelming feel of negativity, it is exhausting. And if you've not realized this truth, there are many things that you legit can't control. You're probably at least feeling that. But here's the thing, I think many of us have lost sight of the fact that in the midst of all the exhaustion that we face every day, there are things that we can control. But that might be really hard for you to see right now. And so in this episode, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about this concept, a little bit to give us some understanding of what we can't control. But then we're going to pivot and we're going to shift gears and we're going to talk about what we can control. So, this is going to be an episode. It's going to be part 1 of 3 because there is a total of 8 different things that we need to talk about. And so, this is part 1 of 3. And it's going to be an episode that you are going to want to not only listen to if life feels at all out of control for you, but also if you know that you have friends or loved ones who also feel like, what is happening in the world today? This is going to be an episode to share with them. So let's get started with the first thing that we need to understand. And I've got a mantra for you. We are a huge fan of mantras here on the Intentional Midlife Mom podcast. We are a huge fan of mantras. Basically, mantras are a way for us to take back control of our thoughts. They are ways of getting back in the driver's seat. They are empowering statements that we need to recall at times because it's so easy to get lost in all of the unplanned things, all of the problems, all of the ways that we feel stuck. And so mantras help pull us out of all of those things. So here's the first thing that you need to understand. It's kind of a mantra. Here's what it says: I still decide. I still decide. No matter what is happening in the world around you, it's important to understand and to cling it to the truth. I still decide. But if we're human, if you're human like me, in most of the cases and many times, you're going to find yourself doubting this. And when that happens, we feel uneasy about the future. So it can be really hard for us to remember and to recall and to feel a sense of empowerment about the fact that I still decide. So I love personality tests, and I've taken numerous personality tests. And I feel like the one that told me the most about myself was the Strengths Finders test. And in this test, you can take it, and I think you can get your top 5 or 6 strengths. I think you can get those for free. But if you pay, I feel like it's about $70 or $80, you can get your full scope of strengths. And I think it's about a list of 34, 35 things, somewhere right around that. And so what that means is when you get to those bottom numbers, those are actually your weaknesses. And I, as much as I think it's helpful to know what your strengths are, I might argue that it is even more helpful and more pivotal for you to know your weaknesses. And so for me, those bottom numbers were so telling. And the one that was dead last for me is interesting. Dead last for me was positivity. And that might seem interesting to you because a lot of people who know me in more recent years, this is interesting to them because they see me as a positive person. And I love that because what that tells me is that by my natural wiring, because I think this test does a decent job of helping you know your innate initial wiring. And my innate initial wiring says, hey, you're kind of not a positive person. In fact, you are definitely a glass half empty person. And I would agree. Honestly, I am that by nature. But the fact that people that I have met over the past 10 years don't necessarily see this side of me quite so much tells me that I have learned how to overcome my innate initial wiring that leans more to the negative side, and I have become more of a positive person. I have done that by learning to change my initial wiring. And if that's true for me, that's true for you too. So over time, I've learned to be a positive person. People who know me now, they can see this positive side of me more than perhaps my third grade friends, let's just say. I've learned how to not see the glass as half empty. And the same is true for you. You still decide. You decide. You decide what you are going to think. You decide what you are going to do. You decide who you are. You decide who you want to be. You decide where you are. You decide where you're going. You decide so many things, but we lose sight of this. And in this series on my podcast, where we're going to be talking about taking back control, it is so important for you to know that I still decide. You get to decide. So, what does this look like? I've got 3 pieces to keep in mind. Number 1, as we go through this series, I want to encourage you to have an open mind. Have an open mind. Again, if the world feels out of control to you, this is going to feel a little bit foreign. This is going to feel a little bit fake. This is going to feel a little bit impossible. But if you don't like feeling out of control, the reality of it is you probably want to feel more in control. And in order to feel more in control, you're going to have an open mind. So for us here today, that's step number 1. Step number 2 is you need to have a willingness to be honest. As we go forward, I'm going to give you lots to think about. And you're going to have to answer some hard questions about yourself. Because in reality, if we want to change something about ourselves and the way that we see and experience the world, we're going to have to change something. We cannot continue on as we have been. You cannot continue to see the world the same way that you have been looking at the world and expect to feel differently about it. It's just not going to happen. And so, number 2 says that you have to have a willingness to be honest and know that as we go forward, I am going to ask you to answer hard questions about yourself. But the good things come when you answer those hard questions. So that's all part of number 2. Number 3, as we go forward, and when it comes to you deciding and you taking action and you taking back control, know that number 3 says you are going to have a willingness to do hard things. Hard things. You already know this. You already know that the easy things don't bring you the results you're actually looking for. And so, in that way, if you want to take back control, you are going to need to have a willingness to do hard things. This is how to get back in the driver's seat. We talk about that all the time here on the podcast. I talk about how most people go through life in the back seat. We're just along for the ride. We're just taking life as it comes. We're accepting things as is, and we're just saying this is the way it's got to be. But I say, what if you don't like the way that things are? What if you don't want to accept that? Well, then you change the narrative. And so changing the narrative means getting out of the back seat and getting into the driver's seat. I talk about this all the time with my coaching clients. And know that this is an ongoing thing. It's not a one-time decision. This is an ongoing action that you are going to need to take. You are going to continuously need to climb out of the back seat into the driver's seat. In reality, there's big fears. You've likely got big fears. You've likely got big emotions. You've likely got big uncertainties. And that's okay. We've got a lot of ground to cover and a lot of things to wade through here, but we're going to be doing that. And in reality, if you choose to be all in on this as we venture through this for the next couple of episodes here, beyond this one, know that you're going to become stronger. You're going to come out on the stronger end of things because of it. So this is what I need for you to understand first, is that I still decide. Let's talk about piece number 2. Action step number 2 is essentially this. You need to understand that we are all human. In reality, as humans, we don't like feeling out of control. And so we have this natural feeling to try to overcome this. Know that it's okay. It's all part of it. In reality, this is a good thing because you're still here. You're still alive no matter what is happening in the world around you that makes you feel out of control. You're still here. And because you're still here, you need to figure out how to get through the day today. As humans, it's important to understand. As a life coach, I've done a lot of studying. I've done a lot of learning into the human brain. And so what I know about the human brain, in a very small, scratch the surface sort of way, know that we are all wired for survival. We all have this fight or flight mechanism. And this fight or flight mechanism is designed to keep us safe. Our brains are wired, your brain is wired to keep you safe, happy, and comfortable. And so, because this is your brain's purpose, know that by design, almost by default, your brain is always going to be looking for danger so that you can protect yourself from it. And because this is our brain's function, one of our brain's primary functions, it's important for me to let you know and for you to honestly understand that Your brain, we as people, as humans, we're going to always be assessing the situation for threats to that safety, that being comfortable, safe, happy, and comfortable. When we feel like that is a threat, we're going to be on high alert. And so you need to know that because your brain is wired this way, our responses are going to be skewed. You are likely going to interpret certain things as a danger when maybe it isn't actually a danger. We're always going to be on the lookout for what we need to be running from. We're human. We're wired for survival. Know this. So here are 3 things to keep in mind when it comes to knowing that we are all human and wired for survival. Number 1, you need to be aware of how you are taking in information. So, first and foremost, the first thing that you need to do in this step is to think about ways and to really list off the ways that you are taking in information around you. Television, Facebook, other social media platforms. And even as you're watching perhaps a video on YouTube and the ads pop up, ads, they're everywhere. You are intaking information through those ads. You are intaking information through all of the social media. You are intaking information everywhere all day long. And you probably, because of where we are in the world today, you're probably not even aware. And so you need to be aware of all the different ways that you are taking in information around you. And so I challenge you, really the first piece of this is to sit down with a blank piece of paper and to start listing off all of the ways that you are taking in information around you. That's really the first piece. The second piece is that when you are feeling out of control, go back and look at number 1. How are you intaking all of this information? When you kind of look at all of the ways you're taking in information, the second step is to really look at and really identify what is your overall feeling about all of these things, all of these pieces of information that you're taking in. How do you feel about it all? What is your overall feeling about what you take on every day? And all these access points that you have with information that is infiltrating you, how do you actually feel about it? What are the feelings? What are the emotions that you're experiencing as a result? It's important for you to identify these things. So, especially when you feel out of control, how do you feel about all of the information that you're taking on? Sit down, again, blank piece of paper. What are the feelings and emotions that you are having about all of that infiltration that you are probably taking up, that you're probably taking up one side and down the other? What does that look like for you? And kind of a third piece here is as you're evaluating how am I thinking? How am I feeling about that? What is the overall feel? Number 3 says, because of what you're taking on, because of all the information you're intaking, do you feel positive or negative about it? What is the effect it's having on you? It's important to recognize, is this contributing to these feelings of being out of control? Are you overall feeling negative about what you're intaking? Because if you are feeling negative about all of these things that you're taking in, this should clue you in that you need to take back control. You need to keep listening here. You need to keep learning. We've got a 3-part series here on the Intentional Midlife Mom podcast. You need to keep listening because it is so important to know I need to change the narrative. So here's a simple way you can do that. If you are intaking information and if you assess that, you know what, I don't think this is helping me, I think this might actually be harming me, it's important for you to schedule some time away from all of this intake. If you are being bombarded by the intake all the time, you need to give yourself some quiet. You need to give yourself a break. And so here's what I suggest. Schedule 2 to 3 time blocks where you have time away. Maybe it's 15 minutes, just 2 times a day. You need to schedule time where you are alone with your thoughts without being bombarded by all of the things so that you can find your own way without being influenced. Without being influenced. This is so important because once we are influenced, it's so easy to lose our way. And so you need to schedule 2 to 3 time blocks every single day, where perhaps for 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, you can just be quiet, be still, not intaking information, because the intake, it's not producing good results in you. And if you recognize that I feel like the world around me is out of control, you need a break from the world around you. And so this is where you have the challenge from me to give yourself that break. Give yourself that break. So if what you're assessing in all this intake is that, you know what, this is kind of on the negative side of things, you are really in need of that break. So schedule that for yourself. So this is the end of this particular episode. Know that we're going to go on from here. And so where we're going to be going from here is we're going to be talking about, we're really going to be focusing on the things that we can't control so that then we can talk about what we can control. And so in the next episode where we start to, again, take on a few more pieces of this out of control puzzle, we're going to talk about what you can't control first so that you know, so that you can stop trying to control the things that you really can't control in the first place. No matter how hard you try, we're going to talk about the things that you can't control. But then we're not going to leave it there. We're going to start talking about the things that you can control, because that is where you start to really climb from that back seat to that driver's seat. And that's where we want to be. So that's what I have for you here on this episode. Make sure that you are joining me for the next episode of the Intentional Midlife Mom podcast, because we're going to be talking about, again, where we go from here. How do we keep moving forward? Because no one likes to feel out of control. No one likes to feel like they are a victim. No one needs to be in the back seat when what they really need is to be in the driver's seat. So that's where we're going from here. So until we talk again, make it a great and intentional day.